Hello everyone, my name is Daemon Behr and I'm with Nutanix. Today I'm going to talk to you about security-centric design patterns for hybrid cloud infrastructure. And what that essentially means is a way of building a secure hybrid cloud to optimally protect your environment and ensure that it is constructed in such a way that it protects your digital assets from the get-go. So it's not a way of bolting things on afterwards. It's about looking at things from an architectural standpoint and understanding how to build things properly from the get-go. Now, first I'm just going to give you some stats on cybersecurity for 2022. And I've broken this out in a few different areas, and I won't read all of them, but I'll just talk about a few of them. In the realm of small businesses, about a quarter of small businesses say that they don't have the staff or the expertise in order to protect themselves against cybersecurity threats. And about 43% of cyber attacks target small and medium-sized businesses. And of those ones that get attacked, 60% of them will go out of business in under 6 months. So that's a huge amount of organizations that get targeted and will go out of business because they don't have the proper security measures in place in order to protect themselves against attacks. If we look at healthcare, 89% of healthcare providers have suffered data breaches in the last 2 years. That's a massive amount of organizations if you think of all of the different healthcare providers that are out there. And healthcare has the highest number of attacks of ransomware than any other industry that's out there. So you can see that the overall trend has been a massive increase in cyber threats over the last few years, and it's attacking all major industries. And the industries that are the least protected or the most vulnerable are the ones that are really critical to the lifeblood of the economy, such as small business. The majority of businesses out there are small businesses. Retail, healthcare, critical to the functioning of society. Financial services, that is the global monetary system. They're being strategically attacked by these cyber actors. Now, why would you want to secure the platform besides the obvious reasons of protecting your data? You can look at it from an infrastructure standpoint and a business standpoint. From the infrastructure standpoint, you have the possibility of data loss, corruption, unauthorized access over to the environment, and the inability to audit activities and changes. So you don't really know what's going on in your environment. And if you don't secure the environment, then you have the inability to provide defense in depth against malicious actors. That means once they're in, they can do whatever they want. From a business standpoint, you have to worry about downtime. How is that going to affect the revenue generation capabilities of the organization? You might be impacted by regulatory non-compliance. Certain fines are associated with that. Missed SLA targets. Again, other fines that you have to pay. You could be hit with fines from data loss, personal information exfiltration, and then you have the loss of control of the infrastructure itself. So malicious actors can get a hold of the infrastructure and then use it for other purposes, and then you have no means to actually protect against it. And then once that infrastructure is being used, then you have the liability that's associated with it being used to attack other third parties as well. So I'm going to briefly talk about some nomenclature or some certain terms before I go into the rest of the session here. So an attack vector is a means at which somebody is able to access the environment or the network. It's the method that they do in order to, or they use in order to access the environment. An attack surface is what they're actually attacking in the environment. So it could be, open ports, failure to patch software, weak web protocols, all that sort of thing. Then you have malicious actors. These are the people that are actually causing the damage. And you have internal actors, and these could be people within the organization, such as privileged business users, people that have access to information inside the organization, third-party and partner organizations that have access to the network, just regular employees that have access to all sorts of different applications in different parts of the network. And then you have privileged users and administrators that have access to all the critical systems environment. Many attacks that happen within an organization are actually happening from internal actors. So you have to worry about who has access to what inside the environment. The other type of actors are external actors. So these could be people that just use browser or engines in order to do scans of various sites or open ports. Or it could be people that are trying to do targeted hacking, like hacktivists or so on. Then going up in terms of complexity of attacks, you have organized crime syndicates that have teams of people that are able to focus in on certain targets. Then you have nation states that have basically unlimited funds and an incredible amount of people that can do an advanced persistent attack against certain targeted organizations. And over here I showed a few different types of external threats that have been in the news, with Kaseya being attacked, SolarWinds being attacked, and Colonial Pipeline. Now, a breach is when unauthorized access is provided over to internal systems or non-public data. So this can be ransomware, using internal resources to create a botnet, exfiltrating data to steal trade secrets and then sell them on the black market. Or they can just be inside the network and lurk around for different types of information so that they can make certain stock trades and do insider trading. Or they can access internal network resources and see if they can find any valuable data that they can sell later on in order to make a profit of that. Once they're in the environment, then they're able to establish a foothold, and that is the beginning of what's called an APT, or an advanced persistent threat. Now, this is an interesting note, is that a lot of organizations are focused on ransomware, and they're really worried about how do they protect and recover from ransomware. But the truth is, when organizations get attacked and breached, ransomware is usually the last thing that a malicious actor would do, because that alerts the organization that there actually is an attack in progress. They will do everything else in order to try to make revenue out of the internal resources, whether it's exfiltrating data, getting trade secrets, everything else like that. Once they've exhausted all of those other options, then they would try to get some extra money by applying a ransomware on the environment. And that's usually as not a primary attack, but that's something that's done after the fact. Or if a malicious actor is done with access to that, and they don't want to leave any trace, then they'll sell that access over to another malicious third party, which then has the option of going through all those same things and making money, or they can just simply go over to the ransomware option at that point. So this is a bit of anatomy of an advanced persistent threat, and the process that an attacker would go through in order to get to that state. So first you have the initial entry, the exploit, the way that they get into the environment. Once they're in the environment, then it's a matter of establishing persistence, making sure that they can't be blocked out, that there's multiple ways for the attacker to get in and out of the environment without being detected. Then, once they've established persistence, then it's about lateral movement, moving from one system to another system to another system, until they're able to do privilege escalation and get administrative access over to that environment. Once they have that, then they can do whatever they want. They start gathering data, gathering information, exfiltrating that data, making as much money as they can from the information that's in the environment. After that, then it's exfiltrating the data and possibly doing an attack payload, whether it's a DOS attack, a ransomware attack, anything else like that. And then with other complex targeted attacks, they may remove that attack payload, not actually do that process, and simply just erase the logs, remove all the evidence, and then you've never actually known that they've been in your environment and compromised the environment completely. Sometimes what happens is when there is an attack on an environment, in order to steal specific data, whether it's trade secrets or other sensitive information that's very, very targeted. They will put ransomware in the environment in order to hide the tracks so that you're not able to recover that data, and then it's seen simply as a regular ransomware attack, when in actual fact, it's a very targeted attack on the environment to get specific information out. So how do you protect against the various types of breaches that are out there? The first thing that you need to do is improve the organization's security posture. And a method to do that is to adhere to certain baselines in the environment. And there's a number of different methodologies and constructs that you can do or follow in order to do that. The Cis Controls used to be called the Cs Critical Security Controls, or the Cs Top 20, is a really good way to follow a standardized methodology in order to ensure they have a better security posture for an environment. Then you need to understand what is normal in your environment and what is anomalous, what is different about the activity that's going on in your environment. And then once you know what is actually going on in your environment, then you can understand how to disrupt the attacker kill chain. So all those things that I showed in step-by-step of the advanced persistent threat, you can stop those every single step of the way by having a defense in-depth approach to ensure that if one area is compromised, that you isolate that and you see the anomalous activity and you ensure that there's no lateral movement in the environment. Then you also need to ensure that there's proper backups and DR strategy in place. So in case you have to shut an environment down, recover from backup, you can do it as quickly as possible. And you also ensure that you are able to go back over to a certain period of time before the breach happened. So having the ability to see that anomalous behavior in logs, using a SIM, using other technologies like that is very important. So you can go back to that specific point in time before the breach happened. And lastly, adopting a zero trust architecture strategy. And I'll go into a bit more of what that is. So first, talking about the CIS controls, there's a few different levels of CIS controls that are out there, and those are called implementation group 1, 2, and 3. So if an organization were to adopt IG1, which is the first level of that, and apply all the different security controls that are out there, they'd be able to stop approximately 90 to 95% of all the attacks that are out there in the industry, which would dramatically reduce the attack surface, increase their posture, and protect them from the majority of attacks that are out there. Once they get over to that level, then they can go over to IG2 and IG3, but that takes a lot of work, and there's no one-hit strategy in order to do that. It's more of a maturity process. So if an organization has a different framework in place right now, whether it's PCI DSS, SOC 2, MITRE, and so on, those can all map over to the CIS IG groups. And there's a tool that you can use on the internet, which is called the Cs Controls Navigator, that will actually show you how those map over to the different controls. So if you have some controls that are currently in place, you can map those out over to the different levels of the CIS controls and then see where you're lacking, and then implement those remaining controls so that you can reach that certain security maturity as an organization. So now I'll go into a bit of an overview of what zero trust architecture is and how Nutanix takes the approach in terms of zero trust architecture, building a secure hybrid cloud. So first of all, what is zero trust? It's a different way of approaching security in the environment by assuming that you've already been breached and that every user in the environment is malicious. So it's a trust no one concept where there's multiple ways of securing the environment to ensure that there's no lateral movement, that everybody has secure access over to just the specific things that they need. And this is a methodology that's being adopted across the industry, especially around government, military, high security sectors, and they're really the ones that started the push for this overall move in the industry. And you'll see a lot of organizations that are moving towards this strategy. If you compare this to the previous sort of strategy, it was more of a perimeter approach where you had your trusted environment, you had your firewall or your perimeter, and then you had an untrusted area that's outside of that. Now, the problem with that is that as you start moving over to cloud services and making use of the public cloud and SaaS applications and so on, this no longer becomes a method that you can really employ because the idea of zones is no longer applicable. So what you need to do is employ a strategy that allows you to take that zero trust architecture methodology and apply it over to a hybrid cloud where you move away from zones over to policies. And then those policies can be applied over to the way that you architect your environment. And there's no one specific way to do that, but with a number of different solutions, you can combine those to create that zero trust architecture. Now, Nutanix works with a lot of different vendors out there in order to provide that that overall strategy, whether it's Palo Alto, Tenable, Splunk, Qualys. All of these different solutions integrate with our offering in order to provide this overall zero trust architecture. So the way that Nutanix approaches a zero trust architecture is first we look at data. Now, from a data perspective, we have the ability to provide data at rest encryption. We provide a highly available infrastructure where you can lose a drive, you can lose a node, you can lose a block or a chassis, and it doesn't affect the overall availability of services in the environment. You have the ability to do recovery with built-in snapshotting and replication, and you also have the ability to do deep analytics on your environment so you know what's going on with your data, who's accessing the data, and you know how it's being used. The next level is access. So we provide a very restricted shell when you log on to the platform, so there's not a lot that you can do beyond just the specific things that you need to do. We also provide SAML 2.0 access over to the environment, access with two-factor authentication, and role-based access control. So you can really limit who has access to what and what they're able to do on the environment. Next, we look at the systems. We provide native capabilities for microsegmentation, which means that from a policy-based model, you can determine who has access to what. You can isolate environments at a VM level, at an environment level, so your dev, test, QA, all on the same subnet, but you can apply policies that say dev cannot talk to QA, QA cannot talk to prod, and so on, until you change those policies associated with the VMs. We also have intelligent visibility, so you are able to do root cause analysis on the environment very quickly. We have built-in configuration management system, so even if there's configuration drift on the security side, it automatically fixes that and repairs it. And you have the ability to automate all the processes that I'm talking about, so if there's an anomaly in the environment, it can isolate workloads, it can isolate VMs automatically. Then from a network perspective, we have built-in networking, so you can span the concept of what a data center is, what a VPC is, and you can spread that across the public cloud, the private cloud, and span them across with layer 2 networking and overlay networking. And lastly, our infrastructure is natively hardened. It is automatically healing, so when something breaks, it fixes itself. So you can lose one component, it heals itself, lose another component, it heals itself. You can keep on losing components as long as you have the overall resource capacity, and it'll keep on fixing itself. So you don't have to run to the data center in order to fix an issue. And has automated patching capability and auditing the environment, so you know everything that's being done. So the roadmap that you can follow to achieve Cis Controls IG1 and implement the ZTA architecture is threefold. So first, you start with the Nutanix environment, which is hardened from the get-go. You have all the different capabilities for unified storage, built-in security, analytics on the environment. Then you have all the technology partners that provide the different solutions for things like security-DNS, security or network, backup, vulnerability scanning, everything that you need to meet the IG1 and implement ZTA. But in order to make all that work, you really need to have a partner work with you to create that cohesive strategy. And this is where a partner like CDW really comes into play, that can help mesh all these things together to create that cohesive strategy that secures your environment and allows you to create that overall secure hybrid cloud architecture. So thank you very much for attending my session. If you want to send me any questions or follow-up, you can reach me at damon@nutanix.com. Thank you.